difficult to come at the end of 2 days of really very vibrant discussions, reflecting concerns from the local and national to regional and global. We've had some very, very interesting insights over the last 2 days. And I really want to congratulate the organizers for having put together an extremely useful meeting. We talk about preaching to the converted, and in part that goes with the territory. There are very few places you will go to where totally resistant, highly denial-based people are going to subject themselves for 2 days to listening to environmentalists. So you have to recognize that we need to look at these occasions as multipliers, as potential seeds that then go out and multiply the message. And it's very, very important for us not to be skeptical about having sometimes to repeat the same messages over and over again, because that's how we make progress. That's how society works, and we have to accept that to some extent. This meeting has been much focused on the issues of business and how business can play its true role in a sustainable future for all humankind. And it's been wrapped around the two issues of SDGs and climate change, because those are the two big things that are happening this year. The SDGs are truly, as I said yesterday, a major commitment made by the international community. 190 countries, 150 heads of state came together to New York on the 25th and 26th of September and actually signed on the dotted line a paper, a document, a commitment that not all of them agreed with. This is the first time that a UN document, negotiated document, came to the table for signature with no what are called square brackets. Normally, when you go to Paris, there are some 3,000 square brackets where each one of those brackets is going to be argued over by different delegations and hammered out, and not all will agree. In fact, you know, the 17 goals, 16 plus implementation, these 16, 17 goals are not all the things we have to do to save the planet, to save humanity. There is an element there of the Procrustean bed. I mean, the idea was to have a manageable set of goals. It still leads to 169 targets and probably several thousand indicators, but basically they represent a message to the world that the leaders have agreed, have actually made solid commitments to bringing about a better world by the year 2030. 15 years from now, they have actually committed to eradicating poverty, eradicating hunger, making the lives of people significantly better, in many cases quantifiably, in some cases not so much, not adequately, but they have committed to a set of goals that are for the first time universal. They apply to the North, the South, the rich, the poor, the industrialized, and the people who have just started to develop. Its universality means that, in a sense, not only is the economy the three strands, the original three strands of sustainability, the economy, the society, and the environment, have been sort of disaggregated, deconstructed a bit into 16, 17 goals by putting more specific focus on them. The issues of equity, for example, are not really going to be solvable unless you eradicate poverty. But poverty is not going to be solvable, eradicated, if you continue to have the enormous disparities that exist in the world today. You know, in January, Oxfam brought to the World Economic Forum in Davos pretty strong evidence that 88 billionaires in this world have as much income as half the population of the same world. 3.5 billion people live on about the same amount of money as 88 of the top billionaires. Now, it's hard to see how you're going to eradicate poverty in a world that is so unequal. Often my friends in the North say, what has my wealth got to do with your poverty? Well, frankly, in a world that's constrained and limited by resources, in a world that's bounded by planetary boundaries, it's a zero-sum game at some point. And if few people hijack everything, then a lot of people are going to have to suffer. And I think the SDGs and the work on mitigating climate change are all intended to deal to some extent with that problem. Another set of the SDGs talks a lot about efficiency. Efficiency is about production, improving the productivity of our production systems, if you like. But with that, the other side of that same coin is sufficiency. You can go on improving your efficiency as much as you want, but frankly, if everybody wants to have as much as they would like to have under the normal present-day cultural value system, it's still not going to be possible to save the planet. Mahatma Gandhi used to say, there's enough in this world for everyone's need, but there isn't enough for even one person's greed, which is something to think about. I know it's a bit of a cliche, everybody talks about it, but it's a truth that the SDGs are actually trying to address. The issues of let me say that the only way forward really is a massive commitment on the part of large numbers of people, sectors, groups, labor unions and faith groups and women's groups and governments and business. We'll all have to put their shoulder to this wheel if it's going to move. But also, there is the whole question of multi-objective approaches. We get stuck with one thing. Maybe there's a limitation in the human mind, but we go like fashions from climate change to something else to something else. Frankly, we've got to devise methods which are now technically called co-benefit methods, which essentially deal with the problems of species extinction, climate change, poverty eradication, all at the same time. We've got to devise means that have actually synergies that make it possible to do these things for very little. Nature, if you obey the laws of nature, nature has no waste. Nature produces everything that we need at ambient temperatures and pressures. It doesn't need huge factories to make, at high temperatures and high pressures, to make things which basically nature can make for virtually nothing. So the future lies in new kinds of sciences like biomimicry, new kinds of approaches like biotechnology of various types, but that is benign and that is usable. So that brings me to business. What is the heaven that business wants to go to? What's the stairway to heaven for business? Well, the very rock bottom, the bottom step, the ground level step is compliance. You've got to obey the law. If a business person tells you, I did something right, and proudly tells you that you obeyed the law, that's nothing. That's a given. The next step up is presumably something like charity. And to some extent, in my opinion, CSR falls into that sort of group. It's giving a certain amount of money, maybe non-monetized support to do something good for broken wings, for things that people don't like to see too much of. The step above that actually is what I would call philanthropy. Philanthropy is a systematic approach to using your resources, not just money, but your understanding, your planning methodologies, your tools, to bring about real systemic change in society that essentially will make all of these problems essentially redundant. But the highest level, in my opinion, and I don't mean to be self-serving on this, is social enterprise, is when your business model actually makes money doing good. That's when you really have, you're getting close to the pearly gates. I mean, that's when you've got a business that is not only serving your personal and professional purposes, but also society that supports you and the ecosystem that makes your work possible. So I really personally feel that we've got to think about these new opportunities for human fulfillment. I mean, after all, we weren't born, our DNA doesn't constrain us from the way we need to be. We've just been acculturated to thinking that money is the measure of all success. And it doesn't have to be like that. I can think of 100 ways to measure success that have nothing to do with how much money you make. So I would like to leave you with the message that the old economics of business based on extolling the virtues of greed are now over. We can't go forward with them. We now have to bring in creed. We have to bring in craft to replace graft. And that, I think, is going to be essentially the only really saving grace. Thank you.